All right, we are now 1 minute past the hour. I see some attendees have filtered in. I think that we're going to go ahead and get this party started. Again, this is the Skills Kickstart session with Encompass Technologies. We're going to take it away, Leanne.
Thank you, Lori. Welcome everyone for the Skills Kickstart with Delivery Optimizer. My name is Leanne Lorson. I'm a customer success manager here at Encompass. Been with the company for quite a while. Some of you I may know, some of maybe new friends. So nice to meet you. And today we will walk through the tool set that is Delivery Optimizer. That will include a number of tabs, including the import conflicts, our oversold products, our close dated products, and the Delivery Optimizer screen itself. There will be a couple of other slides in there. We'll talk about the out of stock rules and also just touch briefly on some over allocated situations we may face. So what is Delivery Optimizer? What are we doing with this tool? Delivery Optimizer is a set of tools actually to manage the many moving parts of a warehouse operation. So invoices come into the system via either the server entry or being synced by a sales rep. And then the product leaves on a pallet. And in between those two actions, a lot of things need to happen. And that is the job that the warehouse is tasked with, is making sure that those invoices are prepared and ready to be picked, and then that they are leaving on the appropriate trucks. And that we are filling those orders to the best of our ability. This is how we optimize our inventory management. So preparing those invoices for picking and delivery, that's going to start with kind of monitoring the invoices as they come in. We'll be managing the inventory with a couple of different tools we have at our fingertips, and then go through palletization and loading the load sheets. How are we going to do that? We're going to work left to right within the dashboard. We're going to monitor it through the day, and we're going to make sure that we are checking each tab before we actually go to pick. So a lot of steps before we actually create those pallets and send our pickers out onto the floor. So how do we get there? Navigating to the Delivery Optimizer, there's a couple different ways. The most common will be from the delivery home. This is a dashboard on your dashboard menu to the left of your screen. Under Delivery Home, under Process, you will have the Delivery Optimizer option. That is the Delivery Optimizer proper. See above, we've got import conflicts, over allocated, etc. at the top. If you want to just use the universal search, you certainly can. Type in Delivery Optimizer and away you go. Once we get to the Delivery Optimizer screen, this is what we will see. This is the landing page for navigation, but you likely won't start here. Remember, we want to move that left to right action, so we're going to start over here in Import Conflicts. Then we'll go through Oversold, Close Dated, and Delivery Optimizer. That's the easy path. That is probably what most customers of ours are using. We'll talk about a couple other options as we step through it. So import conflicts. What is an import conflict? Well, throughout the day, we'll be checking this to make sure that the invoices that are getting edited, typically by sales reps, sometimes by delivery drivers, in the field, that as those are flowing through the system, that they are going to an invoice that's in an editable state. I like to call the import conflicts page an invitation to a really boring party. You're going to know who made the request. You're going to know what the request was, but you won't necessarily know why the request was made. And at that point, it's time to meet up with your friends and find out what's going on. So the most common errors are going to be caused by invoices synced by sales reps after the cutoff time, or after picking has already started, or if a delivery driver syncs after the load sheet is returned. We don't want to be making any changes to invoices after we've returned a load sheet, because at that point we expect the product to have been sold, paid for in most cases, signed for. So we want to make sure that if we are going to be importing conflicts after a driver is synced, that we are very sure why that import conflict came through. The import conflict tab looks like this. We've got a couple of buttons across the top. You've got some filters there in the middle, and then at the bottom will be your invoice transactions that were affected by the import conflict. So when we import using the big blue button on the left, that's going to be probably your most commonly used button, especially if we are expecting to import those conflicts to the existing load sheet, in which point we are saying to the sales rep or whoever synced it in, yes, we're going to go ahead and import this. The invoice is now in an editable state. Probably the most common use of this will be in that situation when the delivery driver is returned before they actually complete their sync. Then they go to run their end of day and they get a whole bunch of conflicts because they have all these signatures that can't get added to the invoice because the invoice is no longer editable. At that point, you would step through on returning the load sheet and then syncing through. That will probably end up affecting the inventory as well. So we really want to make sure that we are addressing those as they come through. Canceling an import basically says this isn't going to fly. A lot of times if we get into a situation where a sales rep syncs in an invoice after the cutoff time or after palletization has started, we might not be able to import those conflicts. And at that point, it would be a phone call to the sales rep, letting them know that they need to re-enter that invoice elsewhere. You do have an option to import to a new load sheet, and this is a judgment call by the warehouse and maybe an organizational discussion within your team. If you do have an invoice that comes through that needs to be moved to a different day, do you import that to a new load sheet, and who do you and where are you going to route that to? So that would be an organizational discussion there. At the bottom, you're going to have your import conflicts, the invoice transactions that are being affected by the import conflict. The updated by is going to be your requester, sales rep's name, driver's name. The route will be the intended destination, and then the error will be why the conflict occurred. So we'll talk about those here in the next slide. Common conflicts. Number one, payment can't be edited. The load sheet's already been balanced. This is typically if we're trying to sync after we've returned and balanced the load sheet. Locked with signature, we see this a lot if a sales rep tries to make if a sales rep tries to make a change to an invoice, or if any kind of change is synced through where that invoice has already been locked. Once an invoice is locked with the signature, this feels very much like a binding agreement, and we don't want to make changes unless it's absolutely necessary. Cutoff time, self-explanatory there. You don't want to be making changes to a pre-sale invoice after a certain date. If we've already started palletizing, problem number 4, we don't want to be making changes after the product is gone, or excuse me, the invoice has gone to pick. Once we have our pickers out in the warehouse, they are touching the inventory, they are moving things around, and we want to minimize the number of mistakes that get made by not allowing any more changes once it's gone to pick. Same as if the load sheet's already been returned. If we've already returned it, we've said that this is no longer an active route and we won't be making changes to it. The last one, problem 6, most rare, we don't see this too much, but there are situations where we may have sales reps trying to create invoices for customers that might not be tied to their location. And in that case, we want to make sure that we are we have this proper settings in place to allow that to happen. The next tab on our journey is the over-allocated products. This one doesn't get used very often. There's kind of an instance where if we have a situation where we have used the pre-sell logic, so we are having pre-sold products, we don't have them in inventory yet, but we anticipate getting them into inventory. This would be for either a seasonal product that is in high demand or a product that has been out of stock for quite some time, and we are taking pre-sell orders for it. At that point, we may look at those pre-sold quantities and think we need an allocation in here. So you create a 0 allocation, you top it off. So no one can order the product on an invoice, but we can still create those pre-sell orders. And then once that product comes into the inventory, that's when we want to go through and allocate that out. So this is where we would manage that from the delivery optimizer standpoint. Again, it doesn't get used as often as the other tabs, but I want to call out that it does follow the same format as the others, as in we have our filters at the top, our products on the left, and then invoice transactions on the right. The big call out here is that save and refresh button. The save and refresh button is something that you're going to want to click anytime you make changes, especially on the oversold products tool, because we won't save your changes and we want to make sure all your hard work stays with your products as they move through the process. All right. The out of stock rules. So this tab is pretty special. This is actually the out of stock rules and the oversold products tabs are not mutually exclusive. There is a situation where they can be used in tandem, although I don't recommend it. I would say if we're going to be using out of stock rules, then that's what we want to stick with, because once it's automated, it can undo anything that gets created within the oversold products tool once we get to the delivery optimizer screen. So the call out here really is recommendation is one or the other, unless we've got some pretty, rare instances. We can automate this process, or we can run it manually. We've got that run out of stock button there at the bottom on the left. We can run it for all locations. We can run it for a single location. The idea here is that we use priorities, and this is all going to be handled on the out of stock rules table, so it's not editable from here. The out of stock rules priorities allow us to decide without having to go through and review every single invoice transaction who should get the product and which priority. This reduces clicks. It's a low touch tool once it's been automated, and then you can prioritize without using the oversold products tool. So the referencing the out of stock rules table. We don't make edits to the out of stock rules within the tab because the person who may be creating the out of stock rules and setting those priorities might not be the person who's clicking the button every day. It might be two different people. Same with pick rules, which you may be familiar with. So the tool, the permission to edit the table is pick rule setup. It is location specific, but we can run it for all locations if we like. And the auto run palletization, if that is set, will run when you hit palletization on the delivery optimizer screen. So you don't have to go in and click it if you don't want to. Once it's automated, it will just run every time you hit palletization on delivery optimizer. And then Encompass does all the magic in the background, and there's very little manual manipulation of the inventory for you to do. All right, those priorities. Here's just a couple of them. I think they're super cool. Earlier delivery date is basically the next time it's supposed to go out on a truck. That's our delivery date on our load sheet or our invoice. Higher customer daily sales. So this is based on a rolling 90-day customer history sales report, but it's by product, not by customer. The reason that's important is we may have a small mom and pop shop that sells a lot of one product, that maybe it's a craft product, and they kill it, but they don't sell a lot of 30 packs. We don't want them in the same league with our big box stores that are generating tons of invoice transactions and have much higher sales. We want to be able to prioritize them that way. Earliest backorder date or invoice time trans created. This is just whoever created the invoice transaction first. So it might not be that they're going to be delivered next. It may be that they've been waiting the longest. That's a priority we can set. And then on or off premise customers. This was a huge help during kind of the COVID height of COVID, because we wanted to be able to prioritize those on-premise customers that were just reopening, and we wanted to make sure that they were getting their beer. So if there are situations where you have an off-premise customer or an on-premise customer that may have been waiting for a certain product that hasn't been in stock, we can actually prioritize that and automate that process. One that isn't on here that doesn't get used as much, but I think is really awesome, is the further from the warehouse. This allows you to prioritize those customers who may be kind of in a far-flung area. Maybe you've got kind of some remote areas of your state or your region that don't get a whole lot of touch. Maybe they get once a month. To be able to prioritize them and make sure that they stay in the loop allows you to give them really good service as far as allocating your inventory. Oversold products. So moving on to oversold products. So this tool, again, not mutually exclusive, but if you're going to use one, don't use the other. For the most part, this will help maximize your distribution of products that are limited in quantities. This is where you track those oversold quantities. You can evenly distribute oversold products, or you can select certain customers. You have that control here. It's not very high touch, but it is more high touch than out of stock rules. You can also create back orders from here if needed, and then backfill as inventory comes in. So all things that are automated within out of stock rules, but you can actually control here within oversold products, and you get that granularity. On the left, we're going to have our product list. In the red is our oversold products. These are not available. Green, they are available for backfill. The red are oversold. So there's some available, but not all of them. Green, available for backfill, and then blue, not available at all. We're not going to be sending those out today. The filters at the top are going to give you your location. You can filter by product or on-premise or off-premise. So again, kind of getting into that where the priorities are. Do we want to make it like a granular change? Are we really fine tuning our inventory process here? You can also take it all the way down to customer type as well. Then in the bottom there on the right, we have where our invoice transactions were going to be. So following that same format as we have within the Delivery Optimizer dashboard suite. So getting into the details here, on the left, we have auto reduce all and auto backfill all. Above that, there is a toggle there, single case quantity or none units. So the way the logic works there is auto reduce all is going to go through and, depending on if you're using single case quantity or invoice none units, is going to auto reduce every single invoice transaction per your preference. So if we've got it set to single case quantity and we click auto reduce all, Encompass will go through and remove 1 unit from each invoice transaction until we get to, a movable amount. So we would be creating those back orders onesie twosies at a time. This allows us to get some product out the door for everybody instead of filling the invoice transactions for the top 3 and then back ordering everybody else. Auto backfill all does the same, but in reverse. If you are using the auto reduce all and auto backfill all buttons kind of exclusively, I would recommend out of stock rules here. Those 2 buttons do exactly what out of stock rules do without actually having to make the clicks. One thing to consider if we are going to do single case versus num units is if we have a situation where we might be filling case quantity discounts. That's an organizational discussion of how you want to handle that and how your suppliers handle billbacks and things like that. Across the top, invoice all, auto backfill all, that this is going to be per the product that has been selected. Same with auto reduce and back order all. We do have a swap option here, which is really cool. You can put in a different product. So in a situation where you have filtered to all your on-premise customers and you have, 24 pack of long necks, but we only have them in 2 12 cases two 12 packs instead of 1 case. If it's an on-premise customer, they might not care what the packaging looks like. So we can go ahead and swap out all and make sure that we fill those invoice transactions and get the product out the door.
Leanne,
Yes.
quick question that came through the chat. So you've mentioned a couple of times that out of stock rules and oversold are not necessarily something that you use in conjunction. It's a one or the other. If you were going to, could you turn off and on out of stock rules if you wanted to use oversold on a specific day? Could you turn off the rules, use oversold, and then turn the rules back on?
Turning them off and on, they would not necessarily. That would be so, because what will happen if you have out of stock rules in place is we will go through and kind of undo everything that you did in oversold products when you hit the palletization button within Delivery Optimizer. So if those are in place, we're going to run those, and it might, if you go through and make all those changes, you may find that it gets undone, basically. You spend all that time knitting a sweater and then someone pulls a thread and out it comes, just because it's designed to run with palletization.
And so it'll rerun those rules, and it's similar to a recalculation in the fact that it is automated to run on a certain cadence. If you turn them off, run oversold, turn oversold out of stock back on, those rules are likely to kick back into place, right?
Exactly. It would be more of a situation if you had if you didn't have an out of stock rule for a certain product type, then oversold products could run for all of those product types, and out of stock rules will only run for the ones that you have prioritization for.
So it's more likely the kind of thing that you would make exclusions for on a product level, but not as like a day by day kind of level.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. If you have any follow-ups to that question, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Guys, remember that the Q&A feature is here for you. So anything else that comes through, just let us know.
Thank you. That's a good question. Okay, so auto reduce, auto backfill. We stepped through these a little bit. This is just a slide on that. This will be good for training purposes. There is a, let's see. Oh, we already talked about swaps. Fantastic. Okay, moving on. Close dated products. Close dated products is not going to be, this is really kind of again, an organizational conversation of, are you using close dated products and who gets to decide who gets close dated? Sales reps can request close dated. That is probably the recommendation. We want to make sure that they are aware of the close dated products that are in stock and that they are, they have the latitude to request those so that we are moving that inventory and they can be, part of the good on that. There is also the option where the warehouse has a set of close dated products and they can go through and decide who gets them from here. Auto reduce all works much like the oversold products tool. It's going to fill the orders with the available close dated inventory for each product. The weekly sales here is nice because that gives you an idea of how much we typically sell to this customer. So you don't want to send 10 cases of close dated product to someone who only sells 4 cases a week. They may not get through it before it actually goes out of date. So we want to keep those close dated products going to those customers that are moving through the product more quickly so that it's staying fresh on the shelf and we're not having to take anything back. So remove close dates. From here, we change all the close dated quantities on the regular, we can change all close dated quantities to regular inventory. So if you know that the customers on the list that are going to be, potentially getting close dated inventory, we may not want them to. So you can just hit remove close dates and we won't indicate close dated for any of them. Auto reduce fills the orders one by one until we're down to 0, and then change all to close dates. Says everyone on this list is going to get a close dated inventory until it's gone, and that will be indicated on the pallet once we go to pick. All right, now the big show. Delivery Optimizer proper. This is where we manage our invoices for picking and delivery. This is where invoices are palletized and loaded into our route bins. And this is also where we're going to monitor those sales reps and manage before we start palletizing. A couple of different ways to do that. So from Delivery Optimizer, at this point, we've gone through our import conflicts. We've managed our inventory. We are ready to start creating pallets. At the top, we have routing and palletization. These are our buttons that are going to allow us to manipulate invoices, move them between routes if needed. We'll also be able to create our pallets from here. We can also print if needed. That usually happens towards the end. And then our sales routes there on the left, we have 2 views there that we'll look at, salesman view and route view. Those are 2 dynamic views that allow us to get a clear picture of what's going on in the market while we're getting ready to pick. We've got our load sheets in the middle. This is the meat and potatoes of what we are going to be working with when we go through Delivery Optimizer. And we've got our filters on the left. This is how we decide what we're going to palletize and when. All right, so those columns on the left, we can filter by location, filter by delivery date. We can select multiple delivery dates if needed. That's fine. Task status, that is going to be the pre-sale task status. So we can go through and just filter by complete. And that way we know we're only we're only palletizing invoices that have been marked complete by the task status. This is really helpful if you are palletizing by customer, because then each individual invoice will be on its own pallet, and then you don't have to worry about the other invoices that may subsequently be coming through the queue. Also by route and route type and load group. So load group is really important because you may be ready to, maybe we're waiting until the very end to filter to our load group for kegs because we want to load those last. However, the flow is for your warehouse. You have the latitude here to make those decisions within Delivery Optimizer. Okay. So when do we start to pick? Most of us are going to be using a cutoff time. That doesn't mean that we need to wait till the cutoff time in order to start our picking. So we have over there on the right side of the screen is our salesman view and our route view. Salesman view has been around for a long time. If the salesman name is white, that means they're still working. You can click on that plus sign and take a look at the invoices below. If the salesman's name is yellow, that means that they've ended their day. They have completed their day. They are done. You can go ahead and start picking the invoices for those routes. If the customer name is dark yellow, that means the task has been marked complete. If it's light yellow, it's still assigned and it's not ready for pick. We can see that one there in the middle where there's 0 cases and no time entered. So ostensibly, the sales rep hasn't been there yet. We want to hold off on creating any pallets for the route that customer is on in the event that we want to be palletizing by route, which most of us will. The route view is super cool. So this aggregates all that information I just gave you by delivery route. So if you don't have a one-to-one relationship between your sales reps and your delivery drivers, which most of us won't, we don't have to wait until all the sales reps are done. We can actually look within each delivery route here and see that that dark yellow, the task status is complete. We've got cases on there, and we can go ahead and start picking that route because it's ready to go. The delivery optimizer tools there at the top, just quick notes on these. Routing, we won't cover routing here, but you do have the opportunity within dynamic routing and the map routing tools to move invoices around. This is super helpful if you have a truck that's out of service and that route's not going to be running. We can take all those invoices and move them dynamically to other routes. Within palletization, applying pick rules just goes through and applies our pick rules. That gives us an idea of where our pickers are going to be going. Add load sheets and load sheets, pretty self-explanatory there. Load sheets definitely not going to happen until we're done picking. And then the big one is palletization there at the top. That's the one we'll be using when we are ready to create our pallets. When we are done picking, we can print manifests and invoices. If you are delivering on paper invoices, that is an option. Also, printing loaded items gives you an opportunity to print out just a list of the items that are going to be on the truck. In the middle of our delivery optimizer screen, we've got a list of routes. These are our load sheets with our invoices listed below. We've got our load sheet date, our route, and then our driver. The numbers in the middle are going to be our stops, number of cases that are not ordered, and then the palletized, processed, and confirmed. These are all the percentage of the route that has been palletized, the percentage of route that is processed. And we'll talk about the differences between those two things here in a moment. And then total number of pallets and our product pick types there on the right. That information is more for kind of getting an idea of, will this all fit on a truck in part? It also gives you the opportunity to monitor if you've got some unbalanced loads out there. When we are ready to start working with a route, go ahead and hit the plus sign on one of those routes, and you're going to get the list of invoices that are there. The method is coming from the pick rule that has been applied. When you hit that plus button, we automatically apply pick rules. You'll see a little clock thinking, and then this will pull up. So that pick method is coming from the pick rule. We'll check on our load sheet. You can also check individual invoices if you don't want to go ahead and palletize the entire route at one time. Mapped and dynamic routing, this is a good time to do that. You can select multiple routes and drag and drop between, or you can pull up a single route and move invoices and resequence them that way. And then we can also select our load sheet and click palletize when we are ready to go. Once we do select the route and click palletization, we're taken to this screen. This is the palletization landing screen. This gives you an idea of what some of those, not what the pallets are going to necessarily look like, but this is a list of what we are going to be palletizing. We can combine all of them here. That puts them all on one pallet as much as, well, within the palletization parameters. And once we do click on palletize, we get to the load sheet preprint screen. And from there, you can either go back to optimizer. At this point, your pallets have been created. You can go to vehicle planner, which allows you to move pallets around on a truck. Print preview is going to just give you a preview of what those pallets are going to look like when they go to print. Process is the big one here. Process is going to process the pallets. So per the pick rules that were applied. So if it is going to go to voice pick, processing it will send it to voice pick. That pallet will now be available for a picker to select and start picking. If it is going to go to print, it'll send it to the printer, and then pickers can pick them up off the printer and start working from there. We can also mark not printed and delete palletization from here. Those are only to be used if we get into a kerfuffle and we have to back out of there. We can also mark them pick complete or unassign them from here as well. And that just gives us a little more opportunity to make changes if we get into a situation where we need to back out of those things. All right, the pallet status. So after we have started our picking process, we're going to start seeing our delivery optimizer screen light up with a lot of colors. So once it's palletized, this means that the pallet record has been created, but it hasn't been processed. This puts the invoice transaction in a state where it can't be editable. So kind of going back to our import conflicts discussion. Once it has been palletized, we're not making changes to it anymore. Even if that pallet is still sitting just on a pallet ID and hasn't been processed, we don't want to be making changes for it because the next step is to process it. Once it gets processed, it's in voice pick and anyone can pick it up and start picking on it. We don't want to be making changes after that. Assigned just means that it's been either if you're paper picking, it's been scanned. If it's at voice pick, it's actually been picked up by a user and is actively being picked. QA pending just means we've finished picking it and it is waiting to be confirmed. This is per the pick rule. So if we aren't using a QA status, a QA process, you won't see this status. Confirmed means we've completed, we've gone through QA, and loaded means this product is on a vehicle, at least in Encompass's mind. Once we have loaded the pallets, we assume that that product is now sitting in the back of the truck, either on its way out the door or waiting in the parking lot to begin its route. When we get to the end of it, when we are done picking, we have palletized everything, we've sent everything to pick, this is what a typical route will look like. Everything is in confirmed status. So this is the ideal situation. We are 100% processed and we are 100% confirmed. We have all of our orange confirmed pallets there and we are ready to load our load sheets. So we will click on our route, click load sheets, and from there, we send it out into the world to make everybody happy with all our wares. So Delivery Optimizer, are there any more questions I can hopefully answer?
Let us know if you'd like to be unmuted to deliver this verbally. You can enter them in the Q&A. I haven't seen anything else come through, so we'll just give it another second.
Okay.
While we're waiting for those, I just want to take a quick second to mention to everybody, we would love to get your feedback on these sessions. We will post a survey at the end when we go to close this out. If you can take that survey, just let us know what your ideas are for future sessions, what you'd like to see in these. Please, we would love to hear it. A big thank you to Leanne for coming in and delivering this content to us. And a big thank you to all of the attendees. We're glad to see you in these sessions all the time. This will be posted in the recording archive section of Bev Ed. So, the same set of dashboards that you use to register, pop into that recording archive. You can review this anytime. You can send this to a coworker. We're building that out as we speak. So look for this recording to be posted there. And any additional questions, if you think of them down the road, later today, tomorrow, next week, ask Bev. Bev has some great information for you. So definitely look for our new assistant, Bev, in that portal. She's eager and ready to help. We still haven't seen any questions come through. Do you have any final words of wisdom, Leanne, for
just means I gave a really, really good webinar. No, I feel like it's all been covered. It's a pretty straightforward tool. There's a lot more that goes into it that is covered in subsequent and some webinars that have already been created. So again, going back to the BevEd screen and checking out the webinars that are available there. There's some great training tools in there.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, thanks again, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of the day. We look forward to seeing you in next week's session of Skills Kickstart. If you haven't already registered for it, take a look at those dashboards and get registered when you're reviewing this on the recording archive. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, Lori. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.